Cheers.
Cheers. And so my name is Alex Wilson, and I would like to introduce you to my collaborator and friend, colleague, Edward Clendon. He's currently interested in and become somewhat of an expert on aspects to do with entropy and
That's right.
fire and the sort of entropic qualities of fire. Can you use that word? Is that a word? Entropic?
I wouldn't use entropic. I think it's misleading as a general word to use in the fire discussion. I would say generally when we see fire, we don't. The forces may or may not create, they may or may not destroy, and that's what you and me have to decide.
Right, so it's kind of almost phenomenological, like...
No. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you. It's not phenomenological. It's close.
Well, I would have thought it was slightly phenomenological in the sense of our subjectivity, if it's to do with
Of course.
our experience or
Absolutely.
our interpretation. But, so it is a little bit phenomenological.
Well, yes, when you put it like that, yes.
I was
And
just
how
I
much
was
we
just-
experience from when you think of the disintegration and the calamity caused by extenuating digressions and convolutions, then yes.
And when we see this sort of excess of
Huge.
the excess of fuel consumption or
Yeah.
even just ideas or
And they go, and they go, and they go, and they go, and they build all of it.
yeah. Yep.
So, for me, it's probably about 50%,
Right.
I'd say, at least.
Yeah, right.
And that's just the start. So,
I don't know too much about the percentages. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
is that... No, it's just funny because the people always ask me that, With fire, you can't count on anything, so it's like ice. Or like rain,
Right.
or wind.
Like
All of the other things, except different. Completely different.
like paradoxical kind of.
The same, but completely different.
Yeah.
In the same way as if I were to move forward out into the stream, and then it parts, nuclear, famine, wildfire. I can't just throw those words there.
Yeah, they are very specific, you're right. Yeah, we've got to be careful with generalisations about these incredibly potentially dystopic sort of forces. Would you be interested to segue into talking on a more practical level about
Yeah, absolutely.
the current wildfires occurring around the planet, and that in the sense of kind of like the abstract excess that has nowhere to go, and from a sort of metaphysical or physics perspective, because you're such a I know what you do as philosophy, but it sort of borders on physics and
Yeah, so for me, what we've got here is a build-up, a compression, and then over time the gradual release.
mm-hmm.
And what I think that we have to understand on all of this is the double-sided nature where the two might meet, and the intersections, of course, gender, sexuality, all of that. It's all important, and in this all-encompassing arc that we have, this framework within the wildfire discussion. And I think if we build it up build up that discussion. But we also have to know.
So just this understanding of like our collective or personal responsibility to something like as destructive as an extinction.
I think when we move, there is often a bit of a push, but also as we come down stronger, there will be an uplifting. And so I think when you find what you find with these large groups of people, and they are large, they're enormous, and what you find is that there will be a general thrust toward what we do.
That sort of moves into a discourse that oversimplifies.
I think so. And I think there's also often the case, with the mainstream outlook, is that it can be very divisive, and it can be divisive, and it can be manipulative, and it can really pull back and take away some of those things that people have worked so hard, the tiny little paper cuts that build, and they really do, and they will scoop out the meaning of what it is that we're trying to say in this discussion, and what everybody's trying to say in their discussions, individually and as a collective.
Yeah.
And I don't like to use the word collective.
Right.
But I don't like to use the word individual either. So.
Okay. So when I see these images of, I can't even recall the name of the animal, it's sort of, goodness, it's kind of like a porcupine, but it's, it was buried, right in the dust of the fires in Australia.
Oh, yeah. And a Chinuda.
Yes, that's it. Incredible that something like this could survive in such hostile conditions.
Yes, that.
And then sort of that is this kind of metaphor of like, something that's nestled close into the earth, and then we're confronted in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, with these orange skies blowing over from Australia. There's kind of all these forces pulling in different directions, and very abstractly but also very directly suggesting that culture is always taking new forms, it's always adapting, it's always changing, and we're all responsible, each of us, for creating culture and for some form of survival, or the shifting of perspective and the shifting of understandings. Yeah.
Well, I think with the shifting of perspective, a lot has been taken from the landscape with these fires, and I don't think that the perspective has changed. To me, it's abjection, and it's taking the complete compound of a really digressive set of institutions, which we and then running in a sense to understand openly from those positions, from who we are, how we feel, if that makes sense. And how we relate.
Yeah, I find this idea of digression very interesting in this age of syncopation and internet. How we're completely tracked and traced, and all about data, and there's no privacy at all.
Well, it's ideology.
Yes, it's ideology.
And we come full circle from that into a new wave where there will be more substantiation of those things.
Yes, that's true. Just the unpredictability of the digression maybe is the future.
And on that note,
so we just go off topic. I think going off topic is the way forward, because it's unpredictable, and then it's very, very hard to trace or track or predict or have an algorithm that's sort of actually going to tell you what ad to watch, or because you're constantly digressing. And
Yeah.
this is, feeding into this the unwhole bodies of that already are, non-white bodies, queer bodies, or female bodies, which never really are whole considered. They're always othered. So there's sort of a little point of, and again, it comes back to entropy again, where it's sort of like the excess of society. Even though again it's really ideology. And it's interesting how the sort of cybernetics is going to be really big in this next decade, and bioengineering and so on.
Huge.
But like that, ultimately, if we become these kind of disembodied, kind of compartmentalized or decompartmentalized, depending on your perspective, societies, we can actually everything can become poetic. So even, Korea or, animals dying in Australia in the billions, it's just sort of this poetic little blip in the kind of the larger scheme of even like, the deep sea and how, the kinds of...
Exactly.
Yeah, like the darkness and the inability to really survive in the deep, deep ocean is...
And it's not okay.
No.
And it's not okay that we ignore those parts of ourselves and of the planet. And in the deep earth as well. There's a fire raging 24/7. But
right.
we don't address that.
Didn't know that.
In our conversations. Do it.
No.
So I do think that to talk about that is hugely disrespectful this time.
And yet there's also hermeneutics, and then there's also, mysticism, ascetic traditions from all sorts of different cultures, whereby where our understanding is so limited, and our brain capacity is we barely use any of our brain, and maybe the deep ocean is not for us to be in. And there are just parts of this planet that we will never understand, and that's okay. That we don't have to always be controlling, and that we are sort of...
There's a defeatist element, though, there that I think comes up within the feudalism approach, and I always think, if you could restructure and recompartmentalize some of the issues that are taking up the majority, really, of the sort of deep internal discussion, as well as like the foundations for a larger birthing of what could be a really kind, empathetic way to look at these things, and you've got nothing there. So when I go back down to the big topics,
like the black holes.
Well, yeah, and then if you start there,
and
you
is
come
the
right back
sun
around.
really actually setting, or is that just a
Well,
perception?
Well, in procreativity, agnostic, as well as procreativity and thermal.
And I thought you meant like
and nuclear
reproduction.
Oh no, procreativity. That's completely different.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. You with me?
Yes, I'm
keeping
with
up.
you.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I'm keeping up. Yeah.
So I mean, So I think there's a lot to be discussed in terms of where New Zealand stands and how it's placed to be at the frontier of the world of every day, but also in a political sense, we're at the frontier of how we approach these issues.
Yeah.
And there
First world
are
problems.
literally people who would.
This would be their water.
This would be their week's supply. Yeah, this would be their week's supply. Face ointment or anything that they could use. I don't know how. So it's completely, when you look at it like that, utterly ridiculous.
Absurd.
And how we approach this. I mean, it's shameful.
Yes.
I felt it deeply ashamed. Every day.
Let's talk about shame.
Right, yeah.
Because that's also sort of a form of entropy. Or excessive...
Going back to that word,
Yeah.
Would you not say that it's a refinement?
Oh, a refinement of the self, or
When things get burned away.
so like a purification.
Yeah, I think if you look at the fundamental laws that we live under, there's a certain reducing that happens.
I'm not a big fan of minimalism and refinement or reduction. I'm much more interested in excess. Yeah.